Because I was about to, I'm like, should I leave and then use the link again and come back? But you in. All right, we live.
We live in full effect, baby. In this thing, one time for the one time. You are now watching J.U.K Sports Show. I'm your host, King Ralph, here with the homie and my co-host, the homie Kai.
What's good?
What's up?
All right, there we go. Yeah, I'm ready for the day, man. We got a lot of big news to talk about today.
Facts. Well, before we get everything jumping, got to send a shout out to the sponsors. If you want to do any photo shoots, music videos, podcasts like what you're watching, need help with any type of suggestions, maybe counseling for a podcast, call the number on the bottom of the screen, 707-FIT-BOXER. And we're going to jump straight in. The other day we had some sad news. One of our greats as far as the black community, pillars in the black community, as well as one of the greatest athletes of all time, Bill Russell, passed away at the age of 88. To honor him, before we start the show, we are going to give 11 seconds of silence in recognition of his 11 championships in 12 seasons. We're going to start now. And Bill Russell was one of the greats, man. Like we when we do our rankings, we do kind of slight him in the circumstances. No, but it's no indictment of him as an athlete. So we all know about the 11 championships in 12 seasons, and we talk about that as far as like how many stars were on that team. But when you take a deeper dive into who he was as a player, just his role on that team going into where he was, who he was in college versus where he was at when he became a pro. Like, he took a back seat to a lot of things because he was a bucket getter in college. Then once he gets to the league, then he starts to defense becomes a focus. Then it's like if I have so many different people that can score, you don't need me to score now.
Yeah.
Then on top of that, when we start talking about the things that he did at the summit with Ali, Jim Brown, and all of those guys, like what he was able to do in the fights that he would take on for the black community, him trying to buy a house in Boston and them ransacking his house, and like if they can do this to me, and I'm winning championships here, like how is the average black person in Boston being treated? Then
exactly.
Then there's even moments where they go down and they refuse meals, and he led a protest against that restaurant and in that area. So like I think that what his legacy, I don't think we ever really give it that much light. I mean, it sucks that it has to be in this fashion and manner for us to really dive into who he was and what it meant. But to you, I've already given my piece. To you, what is Bill Russell's legacy?
Bill Russell's legacy is potent, profound, and huge, quite honestly. When I look at a guy like Bill Russell, he was more than just an athlete. I think that's the best way to put it. He was more than just an athlete. He was really out there, being an advocate for change, right? An advocate for change. He was a warrior. And in some senses of the words, if you want to put it. And I think of Bill Russell as on the court as a consummate professional, as the ultimate teammate. There was a quote that he once said, I believe, when he was in an interview with Wilt Chamberlain back in, I think, 96, when he said that I'll never take anything away from your offense, and I'll never take anything away from your defense. That was Bill Russell. He was always about team-oriented sports, and always trying to maximize the abilities of his teammates. And so that's pretty much what I think about him when I think of Bill Russell. Whenever you see him on the court, he had on the sideline, obviously because we didn't get a chance to see him in his prime, he always had a smile, and he built a really good rapport and relationship with a lot of the star players, all-star players, great players, legends of the game. And he was a legend himself, and he's somebody that a lot of people look up to, right? So we see him every time at the NBA Finals. The NBA Finals trophy was actually named after him because they didn't have those, when he was playing. And you think about things like the statistics that weren't, tracked during his era. So when you talk about greatness in this statistical world, some things he didn't really get a chance to receive the recognition for, you could say. He probably could have got even more recognition. But in terms of the greatest dynasty, we talk about the Bulls, but, there will be Celtics fans or some other NBA fans that could say the Celtics were, because he won 11 rings and he spearheaded that, Ralph, as the best player on the best team, right, during that time. So I think Bill Russell, man, he's someone that we should always be giving his flowers. He will always be remembered by me and remembered by us as a whole. A lot of times people look at him with Wilt Chamberlain and that rivalry, and he was the one guy that, could kind of get Wilt off his game because he could play that psychological game with Wilt, right? So, yeah, Bill Russell, living legend, man, on the court and off the court. And I don't mean this, I'll end it with this, I don't mean this in any disrespectful way, but almost I feel like his impact off the court, I would tell my dad, because I wasn't there, but I was like, from what I read, it's almost like his impact off it was more profound than on it. But maybe saying more profound isn't the right word, but I should say maybe just as impactful as it was on the court. So, all my flowers and my condolences go out to Bill Russell's friends and family as well.
Yeah, most definitely, man. And it's like when you start to see the many facets of who he was as a person, like when you talk to any person like the Shaqs, the KGs, Michael Jordan, Kareem, Kobe, even LeBron now, like when they talk about Bill Russell, you see them just gush with love and admiration for this person. So to see him passing it was wild in a sense, but it also gives you an opportunity to celebrate who he was as a man.
Yeah.
And so now we transition into fair or foul. On Monday, Judge Sue Robinson, after looking at 4 cases of Deshaun Watson, decided that he should be suspended for 6 games. This has got a lot of backlash. On this one, it's fair or foul, and if you think it's foul, do you believe there will be more punishment coming?
Okay, so I'm going to probably get, heat for this, but I'm going to say it's fair. I know, gasp. Here's why. I'm going to take it from this standpoint. Because first and foremost, nobody was there. Right? Now, I'm not here on this episode to play judge, jury, or executioner or call someone guilty or innocent. I'm just stating that out. So nobody was there. So we and other people, we really don't know. And a lot of people are casting aspersions quickly, and then other people are saying no. And then, you have the teammates and the coaches. However, I'm using based off of the evidence that, or should I say, kind of the judge's ruling, how she determined it. I was going to say Sue Robinson, Judge Sue Robinson. Excuse me. She's a woman judge, right? So I think about that. I do have to consider that you have a woman judge trying this case or hearing this case, right? And she utilized language called premeditated, Ralph, predatory behavior, right? She used language such as egregious. And despite all these things, I feel like her ruling was based off of she felt like there wasn't enough evidence that justified a longer suspension. So the fact that based off the evidence that she was provided and the language that she used and the gender at hand here, for her to actually cast down that ruling for me, I'm actually saying that it was fair. That does not mean that I don't believe the NFL will try to appeal that. So I think that they will try to appeal. And the reason they'll appeal, Ralph, is because of the backlash that they'll get from the fans, not just even women fans, because I don't like to put everyone in a box here, right? Because we have Some of us have daughters, sisters, mothers, all that. And I've talked to my homies. I was like, we're not there, so we can't say guilty or not guilty. But at the same time, let this be a real lesson that we should make sure that we're protecting and we're actually seeking out and pointing out if we see something is not right. And I've mentioned that. I told you about that. I've mentioned that with a lot of my homies. So I'm going to say just based off of the evidence that she was given and her stance and even the language that she used, if she felt that despite all that, it was 6-game suspension, then I'm going to say it's fair because maybe, I don't know, she knows something that we don't know. So that's kind of my stance on that. I'm kind of curious to hear what you have to say.
For me, man, it's I'm a little torn because it's like, as a man who has a daughter, I'm a huge mom. Like if my mom was to come tell me, like, or my daughter was to come tell me a situation like this happened, and it's like you would think that they would never lie about something along to those terms. So it's like, yeah, I'm a ride for them. But then it's like at the same time, on both ends, as a black man, we have been persecuted in the public eye as well as in the through the judicial system, and to a point where it's unfair. So it's like for me, it's like you kind of gotta like, what do you do? Because there's been instances where a person hasn't done something, they go to court, and there's no real proof to say that this person did it, but we can make it seem like they did, or at least put that thought in your head to where they could have done it. So now they go to jail. Come years later, they comes to find out none of that happened. Yeah. And then we have this situation right now where there's so many different women that have come out, and now it's like, all right, if it was 4, all right, it's not that many people. We don't have any proof. I can kind of take your word for it, especially the fact that Deshaun Watson has no history of any like bad things that he's done.
Yeah, we know. Yeah,
the DUI or nothing along those lines. Never heard of him being in the news or anything like that. So like to see now that you've gone from a squeaky clean image to you could possibly have sexually assaulted 25 women, and it's like that's a drastic change. But at the same time, there's no proof, so it's kind of like you got to go through and examine everything. And she looked at 4 cases, 2 grand juries looked at cases, and nobody decided that he should be charged criminally. So I'm like, it makes it kind of hard for me to then take that and be like, well, he should be suspended all of this time. And then the one thing that I don't think people are even necessarily looking at is essentially he's already been suspended for a year. He missed an entire season. And then now he's getting 6 games. Now we'll see whether or not he gets more. I personally don't think they're going to do anything. But I do see where people are coming from, because now this gives an opportunity for Goodell to make himself look like now he cares about women. Yeah. And pushing 8 games, 12 games, maybe possibly even a whole season. So, like for me, man, I think that it's gonna be interesting. It's one of those things for me. Like I've actually I haven't defended what Deshaun Watson has done. Yeah. But I have at least put up where it's like low key took a side. So I would hate for me to be wrong, because I'm not man enough. I mean, I'm not man enough to make an apology when I am wrong and acknowledge I picked a side at one point and I was wrong. So I think that if it does come out where he actually did do it, I would definitely condemn the hell out of it. Yeah, I do think for me, it's like you at the same time you gotta prove that he did it. If I'm gonna be going to the moment where, like, regardless if he did it or not, he's never gonna look the same. Even if they went and proved that 25 to 30 women are lying, people would still look at him as that person.
Sexual predator, yeah.
Exactly. So it's like his image is never gonna be the same. So I'm just like, at this point, I'm kind of curious what happens, especially because I got a fantasy football draft. You draft. draft him.
Yeah, I know. We just.
There's a possibility someone else could, which would change what quarterback you're going to take.
Right. Yeah, there will always be a stigma. Like I think pretty much to wrap this one up is like there will always be a stigma attached to him, or there probably is already, right? I see it on social media everywhere, right? Fan bases. There's a stigma, and then like you said, I think the best word, I think the word you might have even been looking for, correct me if I'm wrong, is there's a skepticism. So it's like when you say you pick a side, it's not necessarily fully picking a side. It's just that I'm skeptical of certain things because you want to know more. The people want to know more, right? And so me and you, we're never one of the types of people who are just like, we don't rush to something. That's more like it. It's like we don't rush to something unless it's like blatantly obvious, right? So I think I think the skepticism is there. And the skepticism could be a feeling of skepticism that he did do it or a skepticism that he didn't do it. So there you go.
Yeah.
We'll see.
With something I low-key hinted at last week, Pat Mahomes doubled down on it. Within the same week, Lamar Jackson faced criticism on his decision-making and whether or not he can win from the pocket. The next week, then a couple days after that, Kyler Murray has a clause in his contract where he has to go home and watch 4 hours of film because he doesn't watch film. And then he has to prove that he wasn't like playing the game or watching TV while the video was playing. Then now Pat Mahomes, who 2 of the 3 people mentioned have an MVP and are one of the top 5 best quarterbacks in the NFL. And for some reason, we're questioning their ability to play quarterback.
Right.
And Mahomes came down and said black quarterbacks subject to specific criticism that his other counterparts, who maybe not even be as good as they are, and he specifically mentioned himself, Lamar, and Kyler as, for example. Is this fair or is it foul?
It's fair. It's fair in terms of what he's. Or should I say? You mean the criticism being fair?
I mean, like, regardless, the whole thing.
Okay. So Mahomes, his point is fair because I don't want people like what a bit, but I believe that Mahomes' point is fair. The criticism is foul, meaning that you shouldn't be criticizing those quarterbacks. And there's no mistake, man. Like, look, ever since the days of Doug Williams, let's be real, and my dad can attest to that. You know, man, my dad's been around. He was born in '51. Shout out to him. But Doug Williams, he had his own teammate, right, who didn't like him for what he looked like. But with black quarterbacks, what like Mahomes alludes to is we're talking about like when you look at the intelligence portion of the quarterback, right? If you go throughout history, right, they're always the things that they laud and applaud or they put underneath a microscope and elevate is the athletic and physical attributes of the black quarterback, right? Of a Lamar Jackson. How do I know this? You should play running back. You're a wide receiver. Why don't you try out for a wide receiver at the combine? But you didn't ask Josh Allen to do it. You didn't ask with all due respect, like you did not ask Josh Allen to do it. So they're always trying to highlight us from one lens, from that standpoint of our attributes, as if we're not smart enough to do something. Kyler Murray was being talked by people like Louis Riddick. Oh, he's top 5, or people talked about his fastball and his dual sport athlete, and he's a great quarterback, and everyone loved Kyler, and he was in the MVP conversation. But then you go to he needs to study. Oh, he's not doing enough film study. So what is it? How can he be an MVP quarterback, but then you're saying that he needs film study, and then you take it away out the clause and like, oh, I'm sorry. Like, no, you're attacking what comes upstairs, and it needs to stop. Patrick Mahomes, street ball. I'm sorry, Ralph, man. What the hell is street ball in football? Never heard of it before. Never heard of it. I know NFL Street. That game was fire. You know what I'm saying? Like, that game was fire, man. Between that and NFL Blitz back in the day, man, them Gen Zs, they don't know about that. But Patrick Mahomes don't play no street ball. Come on, man. Like, what? Look, Patrick Mahomes was being talked about, I remember before, by Brian Clark. Now, obviously Brian Clark's black, but he was like, I would pick Patrick Mahomes over any quarterback. This is after like his rookie season. Any quarterback in NFL history, like, would you pick him over Peyton Manning? Yeah. But you have people who are anonymous talking about, oh, his style is street. Like, but you don't hear
is these dudes is out here saying some wild stuff while being anonymous.
Right, anonymous.
Lamar faced his criticism head on. He knew who it was that was talking about.
Yeah.
While on Twitter. But then when it came to like the defensive coordinator saying that he doesn't believe he's a number one, anonymous. Now you're saying he's not a number one?
Yeah, ever.
Wow.
Yeah.
Then homie talk about Pat Mahomes playing street ball. Wild. Like, I get it to a certain degree.
Yeah.
Because like
you can say pickup football. I prefer the terminology pickup football. How about that? Why street ball? Like street ball.
What is street ball in football?
Yeah, because when we think of street ball, we really think of the hood and hip hop and basketball. Let's be real. All right, go ahead.
You don't play football any differently. You're still throwing the same pass. You're still catching the same. You might not be running the same routes. It might be a lot of slants and go routes, but like it's not like the quarterback running around trying to throw the ball. Most of the time, them dudes are slinging it.
Right.
And so I'm just like, what is street ball? Like, at least with basketball, like if I ran up to the park versus playing at like a rec game, those are two different games. That rec game all the way up to the NBA, those are three completely different games. So I understand the difference between like comparing street ball to NBA. But what is street ball when it comes to football? Because none of that.
I know backyard football, but not street ball.
Oh God! Now, if you could have said backyard, because then they used to say that about Brett Favre, which is actually funny when you make that comparison, because then that backyard goes to what's the name being a country boy and black people going up to the street, being in the streets.
Right, that's true.
Yeah, that's foul. I say criticism is foul. I think what he said is fair because I've definitely agreed with it, and I literally just said this when we were talking about Kyler last week. And so I don't have the exact dates, but the Major League Baseball All-Star Game just passed. I want to say it was last weekend, if not the weekend. Mookie Betts, outfielder, my favorite current basketball player. He's a Jordan athlete. You got to see his cleats. He be having some cold sneaks on. The cleats be nice. But shout out to the boy. He had a shirt saying, "We need black people at the stadium." If you go, we just had Jackie Robinson Day. Jackie Robinson SBs were dropping. If they haven't dropped already, them joints are fire. I don't know if you guys are sneaker dudes, sneaker guys, but the sneakerheads out here, them shoes fire. But ever since the days of, if you go back in the day, we had Jackie Robinson, but then a lot of the greats of the modern day baseball era have been black. You got the Frank Thomases, Ernie Banks, Jackie Robinson, Barry Bonds, Bobby Bonds, Ken Griffey. And so there's a decline in black attendance in the Major League Baseball game. In your personal opinion, I wanted to bring this up, and I brought it up before when we were actually talking about it. I grew up playing baseball, and that was actually my best sport. So to me, baseball has always meant a lot to me. But when we talk, we rarely ever talk about baseball. So I know it doesn't mean as much to you.
It did at one point. Go ahead.
Really into baseball, what can they do to get your attendance?
All right, so I'm gonna keep it real. No, to our viewers out there, it's like, yeah, Kyle, you don't like the game, you don't like America's favorite pastime. The reason why I don't really watch baseball is because my team has always sucked. Just keep it real. So it actually has nothing to do necessarily due to race per se. It was the Orioles, but it's funny because we put up this topic and I actually saw their record and apparently we're like 500. So I'm literally shocked apparently, but I don't pay attention, so I wouldn't know until this morning. So shout out to the Orioles. Do better though than 500, but we are in a hard division and baseball has no payroll. But to get to the Justin about his question, what you also said, I think let's look at marketing advertising, right? That's one of the biggest things because brand marketing is real. I'll give you an example. I almost bought Madden 21. The only reason why I didn't buy it, I'm going to tie this all in, was because the gameplay is horrible. But they put Lamar Jackson on the cover. I'm a Ravens fan. Lamar Jackson's a great quarterback. He's my favorite quarterback. And he's also electrifying. That attracted my eye, and I was really, really tempted to buy it. So when I look at Um, when I look at baseball, right, how many commercials do you see, and you see black athletes from the game in there, right? Like let's be real. Like you don't see, you might see a pitcher, or you'll see someone Latino. You might see a Manny Machado. You might see some player of that ilk. But I don't really see Adam Jones on TV like that. I don't see on a national level media. So I think one is also advertising, and it's not just it just has to be black, but when you run any type of entertainment business or any type of business, right, you need to know the demographic. And if you're lacking in the area, you need to find ways to target if that's something that you want to target as a target audience. That's one. So I think in terms of their brand marketing and their advertising, you could show prominent prominent black athletes in the game that are successful, that people can look to and kids can look to, because the kids are going to be the ones that if they point to the TV, hey, Daddy, can I do that? Blah, blah, blah. Then you're going to want to send them to camp, right? Because the parents will then, how it is being a parent. The kid likes something, they point to the TV or they want something, and then next thing you know, you're at a movie because the kid wanted to go see said movie. So I think for me, just from an outsider who doesn't watch the game so much and isn't clearly clearly, but fully always up to speed on it. You know better than me on this topic. I would say probably let's start with adjusting the marketing efforts if we're talking strictly from the MLB level. That is. So that's kind of my opinion.
Man, I've been sitting here thinking about this, and it's so many different avenues that you can probably get to.
Yeah, probably.
If you're onto something when it comes to the marketing for it, though. But the thing about baseball, and I just went and looked all the way back to like '08. Aaron Judge is mixed. They've had Andrew McCutcheon on there. They had Ryan Howard.
Everybody Ryan Howard. The Phillies.
Yeah.
Yeah. Shout out to
him. And Ken Griffey was on 17. That was actually the last MLB The Show I bought. And so I do think that like we've had the representation, but I don't think it's been pushed. Although there's been cover athletes, do we really see like Ryan Howard had the Subway commercials?
Yeah,
he was on those, but I never really saw Andrew McCutcheon on there. He had a dope personality. Dude was literally super funny. He had impersonations. Like you would see him do stuff on SportsCenter, but you never really see like as far as like syndicate TV commercials. Then on top of that, they've made an effort to go to inner cities and get and do camps in inner cities when it comes to baseball. So like, it's not that they're not getting the black attendance at all. It's just that it's in lower number now. Like we've gone down, like it's closer to 7%. The last season, 2 seasons ago, it was closer to 8%. And then at one point, we made up a big percentage of the league to where like now there's certain people that you could gravitate to. Tim Anderson from the White Sox is a dope baseball player, super black. Even got in trouble for calling someone the N-word on the field. Then you got, what was it, Bruxton from Minnesota. You got Mookie Betts that I brought up. Like there are some you can gravitate to and try to push in order to get people. Because when you don't see someone that looks like you're doing something, you don't think you can do it. And so as much as people try to sit there and be like, well, that's just like, that's on you as a person. It's like, no, like think about everything that you ever done. You looked at someone else typically. Every now and then you'll look and be like, man, I just want to be different. But for the most part, we all, like for me, what I wanted to do growing up was I wanted to play football at Miami University, and I wanted to be on SportsCenter. And Miami University, my school, and Stuart Scott was doing that on SportsCenter. Those were my people I looked at, and that was like, oh, I want to do that.
All right.
But it's like that's typically how kids work, regardless if you want to admit to it or not. And so I do think that the representation is a big part. But I think the thing I really want to like, and baseball purists, me, Tar, and some of the homies, we went out to Gold's Park the other night. I met these 3 girls were from LA fans. Mm-hmm. we start having a conversation about baseball and some of the greats. And somebody brought up Barry Bonds. And one of the girls gets super upset. You can tell she's not rock with Barry Bonds. And so I'm like, you know me, I like to get under these people's skin. So her spiel about who she thinks is the GOAT and that she doesn't like Barry Bonds, and I'm like, Barry Bonds is the GOAT.
I think he is, and I'm not even. Yeah, go ahead.
The storm and calls him a ruckus, and I'm like, yo, Barry Bonds is the GOAT. She was just like, nah, he a cheater, blah. And I'm like, being on steroids doesn't help you hit the ball better. It just helps you hit the ball further. So if you go in and you look at when he increased in size, and there's a very obvious point because Barry Bonds that hit them 73 home runs versus the Barry Bonds that was hitting about 30 stolen bases look like two completely different dudes.
Right.
And so I'm not going to sit here and act like he wasn't a supreme athlete. He wasn't hitting for power, hitting for average, and getting gold gloves and silver and being a silver slugger before he looks noticeably bigger.
Right.
And then we get David Ortiz, who gets into the Hall of Fame. So why can he be recognized and this person cannot? And she didn't even want to answer that question. And then on top of that, it's just like just looking at the whole package. If you go and look at the number, you can definitely tell that he didn't need to hit, like, he was already good. He just needed to hit the home runs. Then go and look at attendance and sales and how popular baseball was when we had the steroid era.
It was the most popular, actually, during that era. That 98, all that.
Yeah. And then it's like, as much as a baseball purist would not want to admit, that was the most popular that baseball ever was. Now, you can attribute that to, in our minds, the players were better, but really they were just hitting more home runs.
Mm-hmm.
And so I do think that the athlete is about the same, and we might be a little bit more athletic to this point. I do think that more home runs were being hit. So for me, chicks dig the long ball, bro. So for me, I think another way that they can get that in there is creating the excitement. And let everybody do steroids, bro. If that's what you do.
Hey, the pitchers
go crazy.
Because like you said with the Barry Bonds, you know, the whole thing is with Barry Bonds, he was hitting home runs off those same pitchers that were doing the steroids. They were on the juice. There's whole books on juicing. There's Jose Canseco. There's all this type of stuff out there, right? So this is documented, well documented. So these pitchers were on the juice when he was going up against them. So it wasn't like it was an uneven playing field either. So yeah, I definitely am in agreement with you there.
Right, most definitely. And I'm really curious to see whatever happens to that. I'm telling you, man, if your child got a little bit of athleticism, and you can partner that with some hand-eye coordination, baseball, you can make some bread, bro. If I have any regret in life, is going away from baseball, because I was actually really good at it when I wanted to play basketball, because representation is everything.
Right. Then next thing you know, someone does a 360 windmill, and you're like, oh man.
Yeah, I seen me over here.
Yeah.
And so, Antrell Roll was on the I Am Athlete podcast. Mm-hmm. I was really very much looking forward to it, because now they have DJ Williams, who's someone that's constantly on the show. I definitely wanted to see what Shady was going to say, because of the conversation DJ had when it came to you running backs. But like I mentioned before, I wanted to play football at the U. I wanted to be a quarterback at the U. So Antrell Roll was someone I really was a noticeable figure for me. And so he goes on the show. They're having a conversation. Pac-Man Jones and him have a long connection. They're actually 1 and 2 as far as ranked of cornerbacks coming out of college when they were in the draft. And I never knew this much, But Pac-Man goes on to say that Eli Manning has a 500 record. Upon research, he is 117 and 117.
Right.
Is he Hall of Fame or is he not?
I actually do believe that Eli Manning is a Hall of Famer. I think there's a couple different things that are going on here, Ralph, when we talk about it. First and foremost, he does may have a 500 record, but, football is a team game. So when we talk about wins and losses, you just can't look at the quarterback wins and losses because it's a team game, business period. Now, quarterbacks can be ceiling raisers, right? There's a difference between a Jimmy G and a Tom Brady, because Tom Brady isn't going to airmail that throw in the Super Bowl and blow the lead. But anyway, all them years ago. So, because I thought the Niners were going to win. But anyway, against the Chiefs, and Jimmy G airmailed that throw in 2018 Super Bowl, 2019 Super Bowl. Eli Manning, he's a a football Hall of Famer. But what I say, the thing that's at play is when you think of the Manning, who's the first Manning you think of? It's Peyton Manning. And so because people think of Peyton Manning and him being the older brother and him having the gaudy statistics, the statistical categories, the wins and etc. And then obviously, he finally got his Super Bowls. People are always going to compare his skill level to Peyton. And I don't think that's necessarily fair because we have to look at Eli just in a strict vacuum. What do we know about Eli? We know he's a 4-time Pro Bowler. We know that he's a 2-time Super Bowl champ. But furthermore, not just that he's a 2-time Super Bowl champ, who did he beat in said Super Bowl? He beat Tom Brady. He beat him twice. The Tom Brady defense, which is coached by Bill Belichick, who is known for having elite and prominent defenses. That 2007 Patriots defense was one of the best defenses of all time, and that team was one of the best teams of all time because they literally went undefeated, right? You remember that. I was in high school during that time. Randy Moss had 23 touchdowns. It was like breaking Jerry Rice records. It was insane. We're like, okay, cool. It took a regular season game. I'll never forget the score at the top of my head. It was 38-35. The Giants, they believed they could get them, right, in the Super Bowl. They got in the Super Bowl. The defense said, we're going to hold you to, 17 points? Was it 17 or 14? 17, right? Yeah, something like that. How do you hold Tom Brady to 17 points twice and beat him? That's insane in the playoff. What? That's literally insane. How do you beat the same team? Like Eli, man, I got to give him his flowers, man. He also has multiple come from behind wins. That's one. And I look at his quarterback class with a Phillip Rivers, with a Big Ben Roethlisberger. The difference is Big Ben inherited a team, bro, that had an elite defense, right? An elite defense, okay? Then you get Troy Polamalu, who came in on a defense that had all pros on it. I'm not knocking Polamalu, but I'm saying it made his job easier. So Big Ben has the same number of Super Bowls as Eli. However, Big Ben didn't win the Super Bowl MVP each time. Remember, I believe it was, Santonio Holmes who won for that catch? So, but Eli has 2 up on him on that, or 1 up on him on that. So, when I compare him to that, when I compare him to Phillip Rivers not necessarily being able to ever reach the Super Bowl, right? And he had really great teams. For me, the case can be made that he's a Hall of Famer. Also, I get why some people may say he's not a Hall of Famer. And I think more than not, people say he's not. But he did play for a historic franchise. He does have the rings. He does have the Super Bowl MVPs. If you want to say he doesn't have a league MVP, that is fair. But if I'm not mistaken, you can correct me if I'm wrong. Drew Brees never won the MVP, right? Yeah, because I think he did. Because I think Peyton won it in 2009 when we thought Brees was going to win it. I could be wrong. Let me just check real quick, and then I'm gonna move it to you. Let's see, Drew Brees.
All pro, but no MVP.
Right, no MVP. He was the one person that people always thought would get MVP, but he played in the era of who? Manning.
Times though.
Yeah. He played against Peyton and Brady, so it's like, do you give up in 2009? Yeah, in 2009 he went 13-2. Manning won the MVP that year.
Right.
So do you give up Manning's award? Yeah, that's your boy, you know what I'm saying? Manning got 4 of them things. So
yeah, that's the goal though.
Hey, that's your goat, but anyway, just go. My goat's in Baltimore, man. I don't know, man. But anyway. But go ahead, Ralph. What do you have? What do you? I know you.
He is out, bro. He is not in there, bro. But
Right.
the one thing I'll say though is me. I think that there are certain people that get in the hall, and it's just like
That shouldn't be in there.
they shouldn't be in there.
I agree.
Or like at a certain point, we gotta take you out, bro. Like I don't think that just because you're in the hall now means that you can stay in the hall.
Oh wait, so if people are already in there, like just start taking them out, like Franco Harris and Lynn Swan.
The quarterback position is getting better. I got to reevaluate.
Oh yeah.
So it's like at a certain point, like all right. So we mentioned Eli Manning. Something I was going to add on to is his touchdown to interception ratio is atrocious.
Yeah, it's Brett Favre-esque in terms of interceptions.
But on top of that, when you start to really compare him to people that are already in the hall, like Joe Namath, people always bringing up Joe Namath, and he has a less than 1 touchdown to interception ratio. And his yards thrown aren't that good. Like, he just really had that one season.
Right.
Where he guaranteed they was going to win, and they won. And that's it. Terry Bradshaw. We talk about him all the time as far as, like, when people start doing ranks of quarterbacks. Now, he's not in the top 10, but he's close to it to a lot of people. But when you look at him, he's barely number 1.
I got him like top 20, but anyway, go ahead.
I'm talking about historians, not us. Like,
okay. I see many quarterbacks.
If you go look up an NFL list of quarterbacks, where is he at? He's no lower than 15. I'm
taking McNair over him, man.
But like I said, I'm not talking about us. So regardless of that's about how we feel.
Right.
He's someone that gets ranked high, but his touchdown to interception ratio is barely over 1. Roger Staubach is less than Eli Manning, but a lot of people would take Staubach over Eli Manning. And so I do think that for me, it's because he's bad in the regular season. And they talked about this on the show.
That's true.
And that's why I wouldn't be able to put him over Ben Roethlisberger. If you go and look at what Ben Roethlisberger, the tape for myself don't lie, then the numbers back up what I'm saying. Now, Eli Manning turns into a whole other quarterback when he gets into the playoffs. But it's like, I can't ignore what you did in the regular season, which is why Julian Edelman is another one that's not going to get in the hall for me. Because at a certain point, I got to look at what you did and compare you. Not that I think that there's a certain amount of people that should be in the hall, but I do think that, like, there are certain things that got to get examined. Like, at the end of the day, were they game planning for you? When people was buying tickets, were they trying to see you?
Or were they trying to see Odell?
Exactly.
That's fair.
But it also depends. But then it's like, how well respected were you amongst your peers? When your peers do rankings, where did they put you as far as the people they played against? And then
go ahead. So, got a question for you. Go ahead.
Nobody was really going into it like, oh, we're afraid of Eli. It's like, oh, if Eli beat us, Eli beat us. Like, but when they got to the playoffs, boy was coming in clutch. And so I got to balance the two. And for me, how bad he was in the regular season, he's just not in for me.
That's fair. My last question for you was this. So, because you mentioned Big Ben, right? And I get it because I always feel like Eli was like Joe Flacco in the playoffs. He just turns it on in the playoffs. Joe Flacco is actually better than Matt Ryan, in my opinion, and I have proof of that. But anyway, that's another story. But my question quickly for you is, when you mentioned Big Ben, Ralph, are you saying that you would still keep him? Like, let's say, I know you said you don't have Eli in there, but would you still keep Big Ben in there? Because my thing is, like, if Big Ben is there, I would put Eli in there. But then, if you don't, I would take both of them out. Because I don't think they're – if that's the case, then I don't think they're, like, the creme de la creme. Because I know we had a topic, like, probably like a year or whatever ago when I was like, well, the Hall of Fame, I agree with Deion Sanders. Like, we just let anyone in, and they need to get stricter on their rules. So, but do you personally believe that Big Ben, it's not my Ravens bias, but do you personally believe he's a Hall of Famer? Okay, that's fair. I can respect it.
I don't think that he's significantly better than Eli, but I do think he's like what he was able to do in the regular season.
That's fair. That's fair.
Because it's like he has a 2-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio.
Right. Eli don't.
and then he has a 5% completion percentage.
Mm.
And then when you go and you look at some of the regular season Steelers offenses,
they're potent.
They're potent. And he was the quarterback.
With like 6-round receivers.
So it's like, although he had really good wide receivers, but he still put up numbers in those offenses. So for me, that's why I'm going to differentiate the two, where I think that there's a certain level and Eli's just underneath it. And
that's fair.
As well as and Ben is just above it. The person I mentioned as far as started this conversation, Antrell Roll, is he in or is he out?
Man. Well, that's a good question. Is Antrell Roll someone that offenses game planned against? Coordinators, OCs?
I believe yes.
Okay.
I do believe yes because he was literally able to be everywhere on the field.
That's true.
He came in as a corner. By his 10th season, he's only lining up as a safety. So before, like, you know how like the Kyle Hamilton, we like him because he can play strong safety, free safety, come be in the box, slot, and actually do some where he can line up on an X. Now is whether or not he's gonna lock him down, but he has the ability to do so. So where I think Antrell Roll is the precursor to that, as far as being able to line up everywhere on the field.
Okay. See, with my defenders, I like players who I do like my versatile players. I do like people who can game plan, but I also like to see all pros because I look at guys like Brian Dawkins, Charles Woodson. I kind of remember that graphic I showed you, right? When I think of the Hall of Fame there, because even freaking Ed Reed won the Defensive Player of the Year. So, like, at any point in time, because I'm like, then I have to put you in the same class. I have the Deons, I have Woodson, I have Revis, who had one of the greatest seasons ever. So then I'm like, did Antrell Roll have one of the highest peaks, even if it was for a season? Did he have that? So for me, I think he's just on the outside looking in personally. But I can respect it. I can respect it because it kind of reminds me of the Asante Samuel, but Asante Samuel I would take. Like, it's a different position, but, you know.
Because, like, honestly, I thought about it, man, and I had to really, like, go in and, like, really do some digging. And he
made 3 Pro Bowls, and I know it's different.
He was all pro three times.
He was all pro?
He was all pro he was all pro second team twice, and he was the first team once.
He was? You're right, he was. I don't know why it's coming up differently.
Yeah, okay. And he did 3 Pro Bowls. So then on top of that, he almost had 1,000 tackles.
I got to slide down. It was 2010, 2013. Okay, go ahead.
And he had almost 1,000 tackles. So it's like
that's true.
Numbers, as far as like his statistical numbers, and he brought it up on the show. He said that I was able to do so much that it might have took away from my statistical numbers, but my impact on the field was felt. And I actually do believe that, man. Like, it's like, especially now where we're looking for, I think the impact of that is like what he was able to do coming in as a big physical corner. Then you were able to play him at safety as well as he was lining up head to head with Wes Welker. And then how many people can line up with Wes Welker and then line up and guard B. Marshall and then go out and be safety and then be a box safety, play linebacker. So I think that versatility plus what he was able to do as far as like the statistical numbers.
Yeah.
I think that he is, but I could be biased. I'm a huge
Miami
football as a whole. So that could be my bias. But I do think that you getting close to 1,000 tackles, 3 Pro Bowls, three All Pros, plus when you go and Google like top safeties in a particular couple of years.
Yeah,
it was Eric Berry, and Antrell Roll was in that top 4, where there was a couple he was top 3, and so why, like, for me, all of those things kind of click for me. So for most of them, which is why I would put him.
See, and that's why when you mention Eric Berry, right? I feel like with certain guys, it's the talent was there, but did they have the career? Not saying that they weren't good during their career, but sometimes it's due to getting cut short by injury, right? So let's say your career gets cut short by injury. Did you do enough in that time frame? It's kind of like with the NBA. We talked about, is Chris Webber a Hall of Famer? But he had the talent, but then people like, did he really have the career? Because then there was a fall off after Philly and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, that Entre role, it's an interesting one. I think he's on the outside looking in, but I do feel like Eric Berry is actually a Hall of Famer.
I agree with you on that one.
Okay. And you had to play him like twice a year in your division. I remember what I
saw. He was the best safety in his era.
Period. Like my eyes on the seat.
What ended up happening with Sean Taylor? Like Sean Taylor, God rest his soul, he just wasn't there.
Yeah.
So Eric Berry was the best safety of his era.
Period.
And it's unfortunate that cancer happened and all of that and all those things. And he came back and he still balled, but he just wasn't the same. So he ended up leaving early. But what he was able to do in that 6-7 year period, 3 All Pros. Yeah, and I had to line up. We had to line up against this man twice a year. I've watched him be great. Him
and Justin Houston and Derek Johnson and all them.
Yeah,
you got a squad, bro.
So for him, he's in, and then my second favorite running back of his era. But I actually do think he's the better running back of the two. Fred Taylor. Is he in? Or is he out?
He's in. Also, what your peers say about you matters to me.
Exactly.
Ask Ray Lewis about Fred Taylor, right? And Fred Taylor was in the division where it was crazy. You had the Jerome Bettises of the world. You had the Corey Dillons of the world. You had the Eddie Georges of the world and the Jamal Lewises of the world. When a bad team, probably behind the line outside of like Tony Boselli, I mean, you're on an expansion team, a Jaguars team. Like for him to be able to produce at the level that he was able to produce at, and it was a different era compared to what it is now, where you have backs catching passes out the backfield. So I look at the era, based off the era, the defenses that he had to endure, his production, as well as the team that he was on. He wasn't necessarily on a great team, even though that team did have talent. I believe what was the receiver's name? Jimmy, oh boy.
They had Mark Brunell, Jimmy Smith,
Keenan McCardell.
I can't even think of that tight end, but they had a big body tight end. Yeah. They had a squad on offense.
Yeah, but what I mean, like overall, like when it came down to the come down, like it was just kind of like, all right, cool. Yeah, but and Brunell was actually like kind of good back then, bro. Like Brunell was always a solid quarterback, bro. Didn't he make a Pro Bowl?
He was a poor man, Steve Young.
Yeah, I think he made a Pro Bowl too, though. Like a Pro Bowl or 2 Pro Bowls. Because he played with the Redskins at one time, back when they were called that, guys. So, yeah. But he get I'm still getting used to it, bro.
Like, anyway. The Washington football team, and that's what we're going to call them, even though they were called something else back then. I'm totally cracking up. But he's in for me, man. You know how I feel about him. Over 11,000 yards as a runner, the best player on a lethal offense. They went 14-2.
Yeah,
my bad. They went 14-2, and they lost 3 games to my favorite running back of that era, Eddie George. But
Young Titans was cold back then. But anyway,
the Jaguars, just like that era, man, like that division. Everybody that you mentioned, everybody was dumping. And for him to be maybe the best running back of that group, you can debate between whoever. And you're really not wrong to a certain degree, but I do think at a certain point when you start talking about career, outside of Jamal Lewis and
Jerome Madison and George,
they were able to win championships, but and I think Corey ended up winning one when he went to the Pats.
Patriots? Yeah, I think he did.
But he didn't at that moment. So it's like Fred Taylor not winning a championship, Eddie George not winning one, but I do think they were the two best running backs of that group. It's just I don't know why he's not in the Hall of Fame already, but it is what it is. He's definitely in my personal opinion. And then, man, I wasn't really sure how to, but I'm gonna let you dive in on it. Let's see how much time we got. But Debo, J.U.K, pretty much that whole class, AJ Brown, Terry McLaurin, all get their deals. Do you think that? How do you feel about the contract itself? Do you think that because one of the things that I noticed is they did 3-year deals. So
yeah, they have a chance. Go ahead, my bad. Sorry.
So some of them will be able to come out when the contract is over. They'll be 27. Some will be 28. Some will be 29. So it's like it gets you to where at the wide receiver position, depending on the type of receiver you are, you still could get that. Like right now, Julio just got a brand new contract. He's 33, 34.
Yeah.
And so that lines you up to get at least 1 or 2 more contracts before your career is over. So how do you feel about these contracts?
So it's actually interesting because I like it because with Debo Samuel, that's what I was trying to pull up about the rushing incentives. He actually has some rushing incentives where it says he can make up to $1.95 million just over the length of 3-year pack by hitting thresholds for rushing yards and rushing touchdowns. He'll receive an additional $650,000 if he has more than 380 rushing yards. He posted 365 last season, and he can also earn $150,000 if he has more than 3 rushing touchdowns. So yeah, I like it because coming out at 27, that's when the wide receiver, to me, based off of history, is at their peak. So they have a chance to go to another offense if they're not happy with the offense that they're in. I know Debo Samuels had reservations or was upset about how he was utilized initially in the 49ers, and he was their offense initially. He was their entire offense. With DK Metcalf, I like it because right now I believe the Seattle Seahawks are in purgatory. So I think that him being able to get out of that, you should definitely have an out. And then obviously, we talked about AJ Brown and Terry McLaurin. Terry McLaurin, once again, he is the best thing popping in Washington, and he's box office over there. So until they actually get a competent quarterback that's not named, I think was it Carson Wentz is over there still, or so. Yeah, but I don't mind it. I like the chance that they have to move on personally. That's just me.
I actually think within that division that Carson Wentz is adequate for them to win the division.
I don't believe that the Eagles have the best quarterback. No offense to Hurts. I like him, but I don't believe it.
I think that honestly, you could argue that he's the best quarterback in that division, but it just depends on as far as just actually throwing the football. Shoot, Daniel Jones might be a little better, but as far as just like winning a game, wielding you to a win, Jalen Hurts, he got that Tebow in him. It's just for some reason, late in the fourth quarter, that boy something clicked, and he just started throwing that thing down the field. People catching it. Then he got weapons.
Right.
On that right now, so I think it's gonna be anybody can win that division. But I actually like the contracts, man. I think that shortening them while also like getting 3 years, you getting over 20 mil.
Yes.
With guaranteed money. And so like DK will be 27. I think Debo would be 29. So at least they get another 3 years on top of that, at least. With Debo probably being 32 at the end of the second contract. Plus, if they're going to continue to keep having him at running back, you just never know what's going on there. But thank you all for watching. It was a pleasure. Had a good episode. Make sure you follow us on all our socials. Make sure you like, subscribe, share, and all of that on Facebook, YouTube. Type in he said, she say, all one word channel. Follow me on all my socials at the bottom of the screen. King Round for Twitch, Twitter, Instagram, as well as, and I always mess this up, TikTok. Remember this time, so it's all good. And then
Perfect.
And
you can follow me on IG at the.houseofhoops. Once again, IG at the.houseofhoops. NBA news, team highlights, player highlights, the whole nine.
right. And make sure y'all going on there and pressing that subscribe and the follow buttons on the socials. Don't just be looking at our videos and then moving on with the day. But thank you all for coming in. Thanks for watching. Peace out. Holler.
Hello.